Hello, hi, and welcome to another episode of Gully Cricket to Bouncy Wicket Podcast. I'm your host, Srinivas.
Hi, this is Manoj.
Hi, this is Raja.
Today, we have a special guest. He's someone who started covering sports even before any one of us on this podcast were born. He started his career with Patriot newspaper in 1981 and he later joined the Hindu, writing for Hindu newspaper and Sports Star. So he is the author of Virender Sehwag story, Virat Kohli story, World Cup Warriors, and he is co-author for the books on Rohit Sharma and Speed Merchants. Now with another young author, Mr. Akshay Lokapally, his very own son, he is writing a book about the history of Indian badminton. Welcome to the show, Mr. Vijay Lokapally. Thanks for accepting our invitation and joining with us today. We are really delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you, Srini, Raja, and Manoj. It's a pleasure. And in fact, I was waiting, and you made me prepare also because I had to prepare. It's such a tough, it's going to be a tough podcast. And I'm wondering, why did you pick Lala Amarnath and not Mohinder Amarnath?
Definitely, sir. We are going to come back to that. And just we wanted to know that you have worked for 40 years with the Hindu and you retired, and then this pandemic has happened. So how are you managing this, sir? Normally, people would like to go out and spend time with families and all. So now you are in a situation you are not able to move out. So how are you managing?
Yeah, see, it's very hard because I've spent my career traveling. If there was there was cricket in winter and there was cricket in summer also, because a lot of local cricket used to happen in Delhi, and I would keep myself busy, and it was very difficult to sit at home. But now very difficult to step out. I mean, you are safe inside the house. So I miss all those summer cricket matches because this was the season when they would begin at 3-4 grounds in Delhi, and those were days really when you would have people like Kapil Dev, Navjot Sidhu, Manoj Prabhakar. They were regulars. Even Lakshman, Kumble, they have come and played summer cricket in Delhi. So you can imagine how it used to be, how competitive it used to be. So, but all that has gone now. You have to just bear with what is happening. And most of my time is connected with the young people and doing podcasts and video interviews.
Sir, I did a bit of Googling on what to call someone who encourages everyone. So I could not get any favorable results, but I've decided to call you as an encouragist, if you don't mind. So please tell us. How do you find so much time to encourage so many people? Like you tweet so much, supporting many people from different aspects of not only cricket, different aspects of sports, sometimes photography, sometimes, and many more things. So tell us about that, sir.
See, I learned it from my seniors. That you have to help out people, and especially in last 1.5 years, if you see one little act of kindness or assistance brings so much of happiness to both. I mean, if I help you, you are happy, I am also happy. It's part of my growing up process where we were taught certain things by parents and elderly people in the family. And it has helped me. I've been able to reach out to so many young people, and I keep learning from them. And why shouldn't you help? I mean, if you are in a position to help, somebody has come to you for help, it is because maybe he feels that he has that faith in you. So you should not disappoint. You can make an effort. It's not always that what you do can kind of show him the right success, if I can say that, but at least make an effort. So, and it takes nothing. It takes absolutely nothing to help, nothing to be kind. It in return, you make so many friends. There is so much of goodwill for all of us. So that is what I feel, Shri.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. And we need more people like you. And you have been doing a great job supporting many, many people. So, sir, next thing is, I'm sure if anyone from our generation meet you, definitely the conversation will not end without mentioning Sports Star, right? So,
Yes.
So I do have a Sports Star story. If you don't mind, I would like to tell you, about my, experience with Sports Star.
Please tell.
So I was a huge Rahul Dravid fan when I was growing up. And every week, before buying Sportstar, I'll see who is the star poster. And many times, Sportstar cover a lot of different sports, and then people from all sports used to be there. So even I struggled a lot to get a Rahul Dravid poster. So wherever, if I go from my place to another place, also if some vendor is selling some posters on roadside, I'll stop there and see if Rahul Dravid poster was there. So I never succeeded in that. But in 2004, if you remember, Rahul Dravid got 2 ICC awards that year. That was the first year when ICC started giving, awards like ICC Player of the Year, ICC Test Player of the Year. So he got 2 awards that year, and finally his poster has come up in, Sportstar. So I preserved that poster. I still have that poster. I stick it to my wall for many years actually. So I still have that poster. That is my story with the Sportstar, sir.
And someday, God willing, what will be really a fantastic thing to happen that we can both go to Dravid and you can have it autographed from him. It will
Definitely,
be a
sir.
treasure for you.
Definitely, I would love to do that. In fact, Manoj on this show is also a very huge fan of Rahul Dravid along with.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yes, yes.
Why is
Of course.
Raja not fan of Dravid?
No, sir. How can there be somebody who's not a fan of Rahul Dravid? Universally
Yes.
beloved player. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Before we start the episode, I just want to touch upon 2 points. The first one, why we chose this topic, right? Why specifically an episode focusing on Amarnath and more specifically on Lala Amarnath. First thing is, recently I heard a podcast by Gaurav Kapoor, and Mr. Abhishek Mukherjee came as a guest, and he said few stories. Among those stories, he spoke about Lala Amarnath for 2-3 minutes, and I was really amazed by his achievements at a period where cricket was just started in India, or for an Indian team was just started. He was a great all-rounder, and I thought everyone should know this story in full length. Means they should know his achievements, because in fact, even in Mohinder Amarnath period, we have few videos, recordings, and a lot of publications. But in 1940s, 30s, we don't have so much of media to bring those stories to us. That is one reason why we choose this topic, and second one, why we chose you. Because as I mentioned in my introduction also, you are someone who is telling us cricket stories right from our childhood. Maybe 40 years for now, you have been telling many stories in form of reports or feature articles or books. So who else will be a better storyteller than you to bring this amazing story to us, sir? So these are the 2 points I would like to say, before we start. And I know there is an interesting anecdote about your first meeting with Lala Amarnath ji. So why don't you tell us that before we start the episode?
Yeah, that was an unforgettable part of my journalism initial years. I was freelancing for the newspaper called The Patriot, and there Mr. PVR Menon was a sports editor. I had been writing about young people a lot, young cricketers. So suddenly he said, "Would you like to talk to Lala Amarnath?" I said, "My God, that will be such a huge privilege." So he gave me the address. He spoke to Lala ji, and Prasad Nagar was the address in West Delhi. So, and then he told me that, look, you have to definitely ask him one question, that should Gavaskar continue as skipper? And I went there. I was welcomed home. Lalaji was there, and there I was in front of him with a recorder because he was very particular that he should not be misquoted. And I began my interview. I greeted him, and I remember asking him the question, should Gavaskar be the captain? And suddenly his expressions changed, and he just told me, interview is over. I said, "Sir, what happened?" He says, no, interview is over. You may leave now. If you want, pani pi lijiye and pani pi lo. But you can go back and tell Menon, interview nahi hua. And I was so dejected. I said, what happened? Then I went back. You can imagine I had to wait till evening for the boss to come. Then I broke the news to him. I said, "Sir, this is what happened." The first question I asked, He says, who told you to ask this question in the beginning? I said, sir, I thought it was your question, so I had to ask your question first. He says, no. He said, that should have come at the end of the interview. So again, he called up Lalaji in front of me, and Lalaji was obviously very angry. And it was fixed for next morning. And again, I went back to Prasad Nagar, rang the bell I was so nervous. He welcomed me in, and again we sat. He says, "Chalo, shuru karo interview." And I got him talking. That was my introduction to Lalaji. I have utmost respect, and I never felt bad because he scolded me. That was a lesson for me, not to ask stupid questions. And definitely not stupid question in the beginning of the interview where
definitely, sir, definitely
you would annoy him. So and then towards the end, but believe me, I asked him the question towards the end, and he gave me an answer. Yeah, he gave me an answer. He said, "Why do you want to remove Gavaskar? He's the best you have." Because there was a campaign going on with Gavaskar and Kapil Dev. So that was my first, maybe second meeting. First meeting was very different. Yeah. Second meeting onwards, I became very friendly with him. But good lesson I learned early in my career.
Yeah. So before we get into the cricketing career of Lala Amarnath ji, could you please tell us about his life before he actually became a cricketer?
Yeah, very little is known. Even though if you see his youngest son, Rajinders Amarnath, he's done a beautiful biography of Lala ji. And there are plenty of anecdotes, and he throws light upon his early years, how he was from Lahore, Patiala.
Right.
But yeah, so Lalaji, I would like to remember him, know him as probably the most colorful cricketer we have ever had. We have had great Kapil Dev, Gavaskar, Sachin, now Virat. There have been many, many cricketers along the way. But I don't think Indian cricket has come across a more colorful character than Lalaji, who was bound to play because those days, cricket was promoted by the Rajas and princes, So he was in the good books of them. He was very popular, very talented. So it was hardly a surprise that his entry into the Test cricket was on a very high note.
So, Lala Amarnath is the first Indian cricketer to score a Test century for India, and that too on his debut in 1933. So, can you tell us something about his cricket career, how it started, and how it has progressed over the years?
Yeah, if you see his the stats of his career, he had not played many matches. Maybe a couple of very competitive games. Before he made the debut at Bombay Gymkhana against England. And it was, as they say, I've read about it, about the innings in various books and reports, and from people. The word has passed through the years, like I telling you and you telling somebody else about the innings. And we were told that it was one fabulous innings, full of strokes. There were 21 boundaries, I think, in that knock. Yeah. So imagine, and it was an attacking innings right through. Even though India lost, that's okay. But he left a huge impression on cricket fans. And I read somewhere that after the match, even though India lost, the spectators would not leave from the stadium because they wanted to have an interaction with Lalaji. So Lalaji had to step out, acknowledge their support, speak to them, and then only the crowd was dispersed because I was told it was a huge crowd who just wanted a glimpse of Lalaji from close. So there, I think that day, the legend of Lalaji was, established with a century on debut. Unfortunately, if he didn't get another one, it was not because he was not good. As you see during the course of the podcast, it will come that how his prime years were lost to Second World War.
Sure, sir. Very interesting story. There are some pieces on internet that Lalaji was sent back home midway in the 1936 England tour. Could you tell us how that happened and what was that about?
That was probably the worst episode you can come across. I mean, in India's cricket history, he was made a victimized, and because there was some change of batting order, which obviously did not. It did not go in his favor, and the allegations were that he came back and he used very rough language against the captain and all. But then all that was from what I heard from Rajinders Amarnath, if you gather from his book, it's very clear. I mean, they had targeted him, and which was sad because the captain was busy, who shouldn't have been there on the tour at all, from the reports I have read, and the manager was a gentleman called Major Britton James. He kind of Jones. So he took it out. He made it a personal issue. He went after Lalaji, and that was a terrible tour. I mean, there was such friction among the players. I read somewhere that this was Lalaji himself had narrated this at the Cricket Club of India in 1994 when he was the first recipient of the C.K. Naidu Award. And there, I read this in Rajan Bala's book, that how Lalaji talked about being made the scapegoat, and he narrated how Mushtaq Ali confessed or revealed that how Vijay, the captain, wanted Mushtaq Ali to run out Vijay Merchant. I mean, these things are they throw some light on how it was during those days. I mean, today it wouldn't happen, but that was how it was. And Lalaji, who had a great supporter in C.K. Naidu, great C.K. Naidu, when he made his debut. So he suffered actually. I mean, this was very, very tragic. And Lalaji would sometimes he would talk about that incident, but then of course, I mean, we would make it a point not to kind of take him back into the era when he was humiliated for no fault of his, and he got support from everywhere, from the team, from some of the team members later, and the media supported him, and ultimately people realized that he was absolutely. He had not made any mistake. He was not to be faulted.
Right.
And I'm very happy that Lalaji came out with his reputation intact because he was a sportsman, a cricketer at heart.
Right. So right. Yeah, very unfortunate that he was sent back. So after the 1936 tour of England, the next time India played an international test match was in 1946. Could you tell us why there was such a gap?
World War II, and if you remember, cricket around the world had come to a stop, and not just Lalaji. I mean, those were some of the big players who missed out during peak years, like Donald Bradman, Wally Hammond, Hassett, Hutton, Vinu Mankad. They were in their prime, and they lost their prime years of cricket to the World War. So sad in case of Lalaji, definitely. I mean, he could have achieved greater feats, but still, I mean, it doesn't take away anything from his splendid career.
So because of this gap in international cricket, Lalaji has actually not played cricket between 24 and 35 years of his age, which are considered to be, one of the best years to play cricket. So, but again, Lalaji came back and he was the first captain for India. I mean, independent India's first captain, 1947, and played for India till 1955, till he reached the age of 44. Which is unthinkable in the current times. So can you please tell us how this phase went for him, and were there any memorable victories for India in that phase? Well,
the best thing we should remember him for is the tour to Australia, where it was a very iconic tour. Australia was considered such a strong team, and Lalaji had to prepare himself. They had read about Bradman so much, and he confronted Bradman a couple of times with his tactics, like sending the tailenders to open the innings when he discovered in a match that the pitch was playing up. And also remember that tour saw Lalaji doing so well. I mean, he had hundreds against South Australia, Victoria, Queensland. I think he had 500s on that first class matches. So that was one tour which earned him and the team praise from Donald Bradman, and like I remember reading where Bradman says that series for him was, Bradman writes in his autobiography that one of my pleasant years, he says, particularly referring to that series. And it was essentially because the dignity with which Lalaji brought to the game, and there was competition, yes, but there was a lot of mutual respect also. And Lalaji was known for it. I mean, he competed hard, but he had respect for the opposition also if they did well. So I think that series was, there is so much written about it also. Like if you happen to read Vijay Hazare's autobiography, there is a lot of references to Lalaji's tactical acumen. And I'll quickly give you one incident. There's a first class match at Sydney. And, Don Bradman had scored 9900. This would have been 100th. And suddenly, when he was on 99, Lalaji introduced Kishan Chand to bowl that over because Kishan Chand was fielding somewhere on the boundary, and he called him in. And that was an idea to kind of fox Bradman. And Bradman writes in his book that he had no idea what this bowler bowled. So he called it a superb move by the rival captain to kind of confuse him with a bowler. You had no clue what he's going to bowl. So ultimately he got his 100. But look at how Lalaji read the game. He was so tactically superior to many of his contemporaries.
Those are incredible stories, sir, and thank you for sharing them. Sir, there also, a bit of we don't really understand what he did post his retirement, because he was associated with the cricket for a long time. Could you please tell us about Lalaji's post retirement life?
Lalaji had a fantastic post-retirement life. He was sought after for his cricket reading, for his cricket intelligence. He became a selector, and he was again known for his very different ways selecting. If you remember the Kanpur Test match against Australia, where he brought Jasu Patel, when he saw the pitch, he realized this was the ideal pitch for Jasu Patel, who was summoned. He was not in the team. Imagine. So Lalaji insisted, and Jasu Patel played, and he played havoc on that pitch. If you remember, taking 9 wickets in one innings, that was again Lalaji's thinking. He was an amazing student of the game, and it is said that there was not a greater reader, a person who could read the pitch better than Lalaji, because one bloke, he would study the pitch and tell you that this is how it would play over the next 4 days or 5 days. It could take spin on the 3rd day or 2nd day. So he was, what should I say, probably the best expert you can imagine. And because of his understanding of the game, he could also spot talent so beautifully. He could tell you that, okay, this boy I like because he's got terrific footwork, or some bowler, he's got a good in swing, or this bowler, he is very good when he flights the ball. So, and all his observations would come true, and it was a joy listening to him when he was, of course, much after his best years as an administrator were over. We would we would just surround him, some of us, and wanting to pester him to tell us stories from his playing days, and then of course his reading of the game, like I said. But he was a very successful selector and administrator, and like I said, he was sought after. He had a good stint as commentator also. Not commentator, he was expert. He was expert. He never called himself a commentator because that would be a wrong. That would not be an appropriate description of Lalaji. He was a fantastic expert, and believe me, there again he was as popular as any other cricketer because they would not like to miss his comments. He was very candid, and he was always proved right.
It's incredible, sir. Well,
Yeah.
brilliant to know that. So another story that we came across while doing the research for this particular podcast was that in 1963, Mr. Surinder Amarnath, who was the elder son of Lalaji, he made his first-class debut, and in the same game, Lala Amarnath also played in the same game and against in the opposite team. And this is such an incredible thing to observe, where a father son are competing against each other. Could you please tell us a little bit on how that happened and how that game panned out?
Yeah, so this was a very, what should I say, a very rare occurrence where father and son are getting to play, and that too against each other. This was in 1963. This was, I think, post the China War Defense Fund match, which was played in Pune, the Pune club actually, and where Surinder Amarnath played for the Maharashtra Chief Minister's 11, and Lalaji turned out for the Maharashtra Governor's 11 team. And there were some great names, when Surinder Amarnath was in a team which had Farooq Engineer, Hanuman Singh, Vijay Manjrekar, Volume Rigger, Vijay Hazare, Ajit Wadekar, Bapu Nadkarni, Ramakant Desai, and Balu Gupte. It was, amazing lineup. And Surinder Amarnath, I'm sure he would have felt very privileged to be playing in this company. And then, of course, the opposite team had equally big names: Nari Contractor, Hemu Dikari, Dilip Sardesai, Chandu Bode, G.S. Ramchand, and Lala Amarnath. I mean, Lala Amarnath was in the opposite team. So this was a memorable day, must have been, for Surinder. And of course, there was Vinu Mankad also playing in Lalaji's team. But I don't remember Lalaji talking much about that game. It was just a kind of I don't know if it was taken as a first-class match. We'll have to confirm that. But Lalaji batted in the second inning, not in the first. He made 47 before he was bowled by Vijay Hazare. So very interesting game it must have been. But those days, that is how they used to raise funds. They would have film stars coming and playing, or such matches where people could go and watch so many stalwarts and stars in one match.
What people must have done to lay eyes on such superstars at that time. Brilliant.
Absolutely. And watching them from close. Let me tell you, Lalaji was a very gregarious person. He was a great company. We would sit at his feet and listen to his cricket stories. And also, he was the inseparable pipe which he used to have. He was known. He would come to our office in INS building, to the Hindu office, to talk to Mr. KP Mohan, who was my colleague, who was a great friend of Lala Amarnath. And Lalaji would come and regale us, and all work in our Hindu office on the first floor of INS building would come to a stop because Lalaji has arrived. And he would be, and he never tired of answering all their questions, and they would keep bringing coffee for him. He would keep puffing on his pipe, and it was an unforgettable part of my cricket career.
I think if Lalaji is born in this generation, he would have been most popular star, right? Across
on social media.
Most popular, Srini, you have said it aptly. Most popular.
Or he would have been on the cover of, most influential people in the world.
Oh my God. Absolutely. And talking to him, the interview which I did in the beginning, then later when I and KP Mohan went and did an interview of him. I mean, I was just listening.
Okay.
And the first time we went to his house in near Qutub Enclave. So, he had illnesses in the later part of his career. Okay. And journalists would, keep his obituary ready. And he would keep coming out of the hospital. Imagine.
Wow.
I have not known Oh my God, I have not known a person who knew. He would say, "अच्छा, मेरा obituary बना के रखा है. देखो मैं बाहर आ गया. मैं बाहर आ गया." So, I mean, I'm just sharing with you. He was
Yeah.
how he would defy death and come back. I have to tell you this anecdote of Lalaji when he was a selector. He forced a 12th man to bat.
Oh,
Have you heard about this? In a first class match. This was, imagine, this was almost 60 years ago. Prem Bhatia was the one who was the 12th man for that game. And this was at the railway stadium, which is what the Karnal Singh Stadium also. And suddenly, Lalaji said, "I want to watch this boy." So then he was told that he's 12th man. He said, "So what? I've come to watch him." And he, imagine, he was, Paulie Umrikar was the captain of the West of India squad. And even Prem Bhatia, who was in the later years, he became manager of the Delhi team. He would take great pride in narrating this story, So every time we would make Prem Bhatia ji talk about that incident where he was the 12th man and Lalaji made him play that game and he batted also. And I think he scored a 50 plus. So amazing. This was an anecdote. You can see the kind of influence Lalaji had, where he could break all these rules. And I remember Prem Bhatia was 19 or 20 that time, his age. So amazing. This count obviously is unthinkable, even though they have these concussion substitutes and all today. But in Lalaji's case, he was years ahead of the rest.
Just to add on few points about Lalaji's achievements for Indian cricket. So Lalaji is the first Indian to score a century in a test cricket. He is the first test captain for independent India. Lalaji had longest interval between two test matches for an Indian, which is 12 years and 129 days. And Lalaji was part of India's first test match winning team in 1952 against England in Chennai. Lalaji was the only player against whom Don Broadman got out for a hit wicket.
Srini, what I had heard about that hit wicket was he played so back that he hit the stumps from behind. His bat hit the backside of the stumps, right at the back of the stumps, not
Okay.
the back of his bat hit the stumps. Imagine. So he kind of knocked off his stumps in trying to play a shot.
Yeah.
Sir, could you please tell us a bit more about how Surinderji's career panned out later on?
Yeah, in his case, it was, I think, again, a sheer, what should I say, a waste of talent because Suri, that's what he was known. He began with a century on debut in New Zealand. He was a prolific scorer and a very attractive left-handed batsman. But somehow, after making such a grand start, I think the pressure of living up to his father's reputation that must have impacted his approach to the game. But Suri I watched him bat, and you could not leave your seat because he was such an attractive player and he had probably all the shots in his armory. And I particularly remember his double 100. I was not a journalist. This was in Irani Cup game at the Firozshah Court Line 1980, where the team was to be picked for the Australian tour that year. And this was in October. And he got a 235, but still could not make the team. That was very, very disappointing. And I remember he had expressed his disappointment in the media because those runs, 235, came against an attack which included Kapil Dev, Kasan Ghavri, Dilip Doshi, Shivlal Yadav. Thus the India attack.
Right.
So, but after that century, made another 350s, I guess. Yeah. And his international career lasted just 2 years, which I think was not in tune with the talent he had. He was an amazingly gifted player, and Lalaji would have a lot of praise for him, for his cricket, because he was natural. And from what we had heard was he was not a natural left-hander. He was converted by Lalaji.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was an amazing story to which we heard. And Surinder, of course. I mean, it would have been great. He deserved to play maybe another 30, 40 test matches. But somehow I think people expected too much from him. I mean, the fact that his career did not go beyond 2 years from the time he made a century on debut in New Zealand is sad. I mean, it would have been great to have watched more and more of Surinder Amarnath.
At least for our generation, the most well-known person amongst the clan of Amarnaths is Mr. Mohinder Amarnath. We know him as the World Cup winning, key part of the World Cup winning 1983 squad, where he ended up being man of the match for the semi-final as well as the final. And he was quite well known for his ability to make multiple comebacks and his huge temperament and his great courage that with which he played those fast rising bowlers like Holding and Garner and all such. A word on Mohinder ji, sir.
Yeah. And among the three brothers, Surinder, Mohinder, and Rajinder. Rajinder is, of course, the youngest. I've enjoyed my relationship with Jimmy Pa because he was, for my generation of journalists, a role model to look up to in daily cricket. He was probably the most gutsy batsman you can ever imagine. He developed into an all-rounder. He worked very hard, and there are any number of stories, about the guts of Jimmy Amarnath, and we were very privileged in Delhi because he would not like to miss a Ranji Trophy match, and we would just, before I became a journalist, and then after a journalist, he would not like to miss Ranji. So that was a great attraction for us to go to Kotla and wait for Mohinder Amarnath to come out and bat, because he was technically so accomplished, temperamentally so accomplished, and the best part was he could get the best out of his colleagues. The younger colleagues, he could guide them. In those years, he was again. Today there is much emphasis on fitness, but Jimpa was, he was probably one of the fittest cricketers ever one would come across. Raman Lamba, if you remember, he was another fitness freak. But Raman used to tell me, after the day's play, Jimpa would take a round of the Kotla, or maybe after a net session he would go around. But Raman would always lose out when it came to competing with Jimmy Amarnath, because he would just collapse, and Jimpa would comfortably finish another couple of rounds of the Kotla, and that was a fantastic. I have some very, very fond memories of Jimpa and speaking with him, interacting with him, learning cricket, the nuances and the finer points of the game with him, because he's a fantastic teacher. Very patiently he will explain to you why the pitch behaved in a certain manner, or why a bowler wasn't successful, or how a batsman, how he was able to construct that innings on that page, footwork. Jimpa was very, very particular about looking at the footwork, and also the fact that he would say, you have to know how to leave the ball. You should be a good judge of which ball not to play. So that makes you a very good batsman. And there are many stories I can tell you about Jimpa, from his domestic cricket days, international cricket days. And there was one incident I'll quickly tell you about how he was hit on the face by Marshall in the West Indies just before the World Cup, the tour, and he had to go to the hospital. The wound had to be stitched, And then when he returned, this story was told to me by Yashpal Sharma. Yashpal Sharma was the non-striker. When he saw Mohinder Amarnath coming to bat, he said, "My God, he's coming to face the same bowler who has hit him." And nothing. I mean, he wanted to speak to Jimpa, but he just told him to wait at the other end. And as Yashpal Sharma tells us, the first ball, he knew what Marshall was going to bowl, and he also knew what Jimpa was going to do. The first ball was a bouncer from Malcolm Marshall, and Yashpal says, I shut my eyes because he knew he will not duck. He will definitely try to hook the ball. So he was worried, but he said, when I opened my eyes, I realized Jimpa had hooked the ball for a 6. So wow. That is Jamie Amarnath's. That was how his response was to to Malcolm Marshall, who was the quickest and the most dangerous bowler in the world those days. And if you remember Jimpa's pictures from the World Cup, you will discover the moustache, and it was because he could not shave after being hit on the face by Malcolm Marshall. So that is the reason, not that he grew it, it was just that he could not shave. So you will see Jimpa sporting a mustache at the World Cup 1983.
Incredible stories, sir. We're fortunate that you were able to describe such things in such detail. It's incredible to just just to listen to these stories are so inspiring and giving us goosebumps. I must have been incredible just to see him in action.
Yeah, about Jimipa and Lalaji, they would quickly tell you that if this batsman was going to make runs, they would quickly tell you that he's middling the ball very well, or something like he's using his feet very well, or he has negotiated the new ball very well. So observations like this, it was such an education, sitting next to Jimpa and sitting next to Lalaji at the railway ground or at the Ferozshah Kotla or at the racecourse ground. I remember there was a match at the racecourse ground, Ranji Trophy match, where 3 days I spent with Lalaji, listening to some amazing stories. I mean, for me, that was great cricket education. First from Lalaji, and then of course Jimpa, who is an amazing student of the game.
And sir, last in my series of questions that I wanted to ask you was, could you please tell us about how how Rajinder ji's career panned out, sir?
Yeah, see, Rajinder, according to Lalaji, was probably the most talented, and he excelled. He showed early signs. Those days used to have schoolboy series, so he came across as a very attractive all-rounder, but not in the same league, obviously, as Jimpa and Surinder Amarnath. I've known Rajinder very well. He was very fond of Lalaji, also because Lalaji gave him special attention since he was the youngest among them, and also the fact that again I thought Rajinder had to face the pressure of living up to Lalaji, Surinder, and Jimpa. So somehow along the way, he could not do justice to his talent because he was a good bowler. He could bowl good medium pace, and he was able to seam the ball very well, and he was a decent batsman. But for many reasons, I don't know, maybe he didn't get the right breaks, but his career did not take off like it should have, and especially having come from the first cricket family of the country, Lalaji, Surinder, Mohinder, they've all played for India, and it would have been fitting if Rajinder, and we call him Johnny, if he had also played the international cricket or represented India. But he played a lot of cricket in England. He would go and play for those minor counties, and he played for Delhi, played for Haryana. But unfortunately, his career didn't take off.
Thank you, sir.
We have few questions from Twitter users. Let's look at those, sir. First question is from MS Tippanna. He would like to know, has Lalaji ever written his biography? Is there any book of it? So I think you have addressed it, right? You said Mr. Rajinders Amarnath has written book about Lalaji.
Absolutely, and it has everything. So many stories about Lalaji. And Rajinder has worked very, very hard. He took time, research. He did a lot of research, and he had the advantage of having a lot of conversations with Lalaji, and of course Jimpa and Surinder's elder brother. So that book, I must say, is one of the best we have, one of the best cricket books we have on Indian cricket, and especially on a personality like Lalaji.
So next question is from Komal Sanjay Gupta and Pratham. Both of them have asked the same question. Why didn't Mohinder Amarnath revert to his traditional batting stance after West Indies, got him out for 4 or 5 ducks in a series in 1983?
Yeah, there were, all the technical adjustments Mohinder had made came from the fact that his eyesight, he had some eyesight problems, because if you remember, because I went through the scorecards. The sequence was terrible. I mean, 4 and 7 against Pakistan, then 0-0 against at Kanpur against the West Indies, 1 and 0 at Delhi against the West Indies, then again 0-0 against the West Indies at Kolkata in consecutive matches. So this was unheard of. I mean, for somebody like Jimmy Amarnath to fail. And before the Srini, and let me tell you, this was before the sequence began. He had hit 200s in the West Indies. Okay. Imagine. And then after the sequence also, he hit hundreds in Pakistan. So it was that particular phase. Even he was not able to adjust. So he tried the 2-wide stance and then went back, of course, later, the side-on stance. So he did make adjustments. And since he was technically sound when it came to reading the game, so he was able to make these adjustments. And open 2-wide stance was something very rare for people to see in Indian cricket, but he tried it.
Yeah. So next question is from Sport Radio AS, where he wanted to know what did Amarnath do to fix his technique versus fast bowling? How did he become so good at it? I think he was hit on his head multiple times by fast bowlers, but every time he come back and he hooked them again. So he wanted to know probably how he worked on that.
You see, that was the beauty of Jimpa. He won, like I said in the beginning, his guts. He when in the team, they always said, "Oh, abhi to Jimpa hai." So they always knew that there he was. And the same team had Mr. Sunil Gavaskar. It had Mr. Kundlappa Vishwanath. Strengthening the batting. And then Kapil Dev came in later years to strengthen the Indian team. But in case of Mohinder Amarnath, it was his footwork. It was such a delight to see him bat against the spinners. And I wish you had seen him, how he would step out and hit the spinner over the cover.
Wow.
Over cover. Yeah, that was his favorite shot. And how he would dance down the pitch. It was such a delight. This is something which we don't get to see today, where, you don't get to see many spinners flighting.
Right.
But those days they would flight and he would come out, and his defense was so good. And like I said, he was able to leave the ball so beautifully, so that was his strength. And he did work on his technique. That's how I think, and relied mainly on, backed himself to stand and face the fast bowlers. He was fearless. Normally, if you would get hit, you would develop some kind of a fear, but he came back strongly every time, and made it a point strongly. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, sir. And next question is being asked by V. Manjunath. So he wanted to know Lala as a bowler carrying the attack with the likes of Dattu Padkar and Mankad on Australia tour of 1947-48. So how Lalaji has managed to set field for Bradman, especially after his masterpiece innings in Brisbane.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that was, I went through a lot of stuff to see what kind of field positions, like Lalaji was very particular about having slips because he was essentially a swing bowler. He could swing the ball, and from what I've heard and read was that when he was a wrong foot bowler. I hope you know that.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. He was a wrong foot bowler, and he could swing the ball in and out without any perceptible change in the action. So he was a very deceptive bowler, and like I said, he would read the batsman so beautifully that the opponents had a lot of respect for his approach, and but he did not believe in defensive bowling. So obviously he must have set very attacking fields for Donald Bradman, who had only praise for Lala Amarnath's cricket acumen.
Great, sir. So next question is from El Chopper Nose, but I think we have addressed that on 12th man playing in the team, right? You already narrated that story, how Lalaji has influenced the 12th man to play the game.
Yes, Chapernos is a fantastic. I hope you know what his name is. Abhishek Kapoor. He's from the North Stand gang, and I love his cricket reading. I love interacting with him, and he's one guy like you are today. He keeps kind of picking my brains on cricket from my era, which they were not able to watch. Today, you can always go back into YouTube. There will be a lot of cricket to watch, but then there are so many incidents. And believe me, I must tell you, Srini, Raja, and Manoj, that among the youngsters of today, Abhishek has amazing memory, and he has a great. What should I say? He has a sense of occasion. He does a lot of research. He will tell you for the week. He knows who was born, who had passed away and some landmark events. He maintains a diary. So he is a fantastic. I was not a cricket fan like him at his age, honestly.
Okay.
So I love interacting with him, Abhishek.
Yeah. Sir, he brought us one more anecdote actually. Let us know if you heard of it before, where Lala Amarnath ji has said something to Everton Weeks, of a West Indies cricket player, when Everton Weeks was batting in the previous test somewhere. So Amarnath ji went and told, "Can't wait to see you how you play in Kolkata on a grassy pitch when I am swinging the ball." And then Everton Weeks came to Kolkata and scored, I think, 130 or 140. So you are aware of this anecdote? Any
yes, aware, yes. And because, like I said, our great Abhishek, he must have read, I don't know how many times he must have gone through the internet, researching all these, looking for these anecdotes. And obviously he has read it somewhere.
Definitely.
Right? He has read it. So, but that's what the best thing I like about him. And yes, this was, I remember having read it. So it is an interesting anecdote.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining with us today and sharing so many anecdotes about Lalaji and Jimmy Amarnath. And we'd like to catch up with you someday again.
I would love to.
Definitely,
because
sir.
Maybe you can have another one from another era who you would have watched.
Definitely.
There's very little footage available, but Lalaji, you have made a wonderful start. He's probably the most outspoken. Yes, he was outspoken, but he's probably the most colorful cricket character you can come across in Indian cricket. And to have kind of guided and groomed Surinder Amarnath and Mohinder Amarnath to play with dignity and success for the Indian team is something to be proud of.
So that's all for the episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more such interesting episodes. Do follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Do rate us and comment on Apple Podcast. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.